Hi, good morning. Welcome to the Startup Day on the Disruptive Innovation Festival, a day devoted to showcasing startups and their role in disrupting the market and the circular economy and enabling this shift. You might have been familiar with LettUs Grow, and this morning we've got Jack Farmer live from Bristol, who's going to tell us a bit more about his company. So Jack, maybe you can give a quick introduction to who you are, what LettUs Grow do, and a bit about your story as to how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, sure, mate. No worries. Hi, I'm Jack. I'm one of the co-founders of LettUs Grow. I manage a lot of the scientific and operational side of the business nowadays. LettUs Grow is a startup that generates irrigation and control technology for the controlled environment agriculture industry. And we would define that as the mixture of greenhouses and indoor farms that are increasingly being deployed around the world to deliver food production. How that manifests itself is really through a core hardware product, which we call our aeroponic grow bed. What that means is that we generate a mist within a plastic enclosure. And plants are planted on top of that enclosure, and their roots dangle down into this mist. And what that means is that they have abundant access to gas exchange, to water, to nutrients, and they go a lot faster than their hydroponic comparators. Hydroponics is simply where the roots are immersed in water.
And where, how does this look? You know, I know you had the video that you shared on the DIF site, but maybe not everyone who's listening has a chance to check it out. How does this work in practice? And where would you have one of your aquaponic setups?
Yeah, well, it's just technically not aquaponics, but
aeroponic. Excuse me.
Aeroponic. That's we can talk about that later. That's where the circular economy comes into play. So maybe to paint a picture. So people may have heard, or they may not have heard of a concept. What that essentially is, if I was to visualize it, is if you imagine that you had rented or purchased a warehouse, for example, and you kidsed out that warehouse, you leveled out a clean space where you could grow food. If you then deployed racks of shelving that maybe up to 6 or 7 tiers high, and you mounted LED lights to each level of those shelving, and then you installed our grow beds under those LED lights, what you'd have generated is a soil-free area for growing plants, whether they be agricultural for food or whether they be ornamental, but in a very space-efficient and resource-efficient manner. Now that conceptually is a vertical farm, and what really you obviously build all the infrastructure around that, so you would build in packaging and sowing and harvesting facilities as well. But fundamentally, that's what a vertical farm is. What we do on the hardware side is really that we have designed that grow bed product that delivers these farms much more efficiently and much more in a much more kind of operationally profitable sense.
And it'd be good to kind of understand, you know, your background and kind of, you know, how long you've maybe tell a bit more, you know, how long have you been in business, and who's your customer today?
So I'll go back to the start of the story, I guess, in that case. So LettUs Grow started in 2015. Myself and 2 other co-founders. So by trade, I would refer to myself as a biologist. My co-founders Ben and Charlie are both engineers, so we have quite a nice diversity of skills within the founding team there, or at least all technical skills at least. You can judge whether we have personal skills. And what we did, so from 2015 through to 2017, we were really passionate around. I mean, our passion really centers around agriculture and waste. So we that's what we decided that we didn't want a normal job. The area that we really perceived as the next big challenge in sustainability back then, because there was a lot of focus on decarbonisation and energy. And what excited us was this idea that we could look at soil-free growing technologies, so hydroponics and aeroponics, which were prevalent in greenhouses. And then this idea was coming onto the scene, as was actually aeroponics. So aeroponics is a less mature technology than hydroponics. So really at that point in 2015, we decided we wanted to investigate aeroponics and its application in both greenhouses and vertical farms. So we started there, and then over the next 2 years, we really went through a number of different concepts. But we reached a point in 2017 where, I mean, fortunately, we had actually settled on quite an innovative technology. So we managed to file our patent around that. We raised investment, and we started to grow our team. What that really allowed us to do is to accelerate deployment of our technology. We've demonstrated some what we consider really pleasing and really competitive proof points with regards to its effect on yield. And since then, we've really just started working with customers. So I guess to address your customer question, we've been working very closely with a mixture of primarily farmers, the growers in this nascent industry, whether they be greenhouse growers, urban farmers, or more traditional arable farmers who are looking to diversify their production. So we're really focused on working with those experts at this point. And they have also formed the bulk of our customers to this point. Where the customers that we perceive in the future are obviously in that growing sector, but actually we perceive an additional set of customers that may are likely to be of interest to this conversation and may frame some of this conversation. And that's really from institutions like wholesalers, supermarkets, and more private equity investors who are essentially investing increasingly in vertical farms and greenhouses as a form of resilient, consistent revenue. And these people, essentially, they're actually further up the food supply chain, but are looking to start to vertically integrate their production with their distribution. So we perceive that there's this there is a broad, I guess, diversity of customers who are looking to diversify their production and mean that it's more resilient in the face of climate change and the global instabilities we see.
And where are most of these farms? Are they in urban areas? Is it peri-urban? Is it rural? What you mentioned, a warehouse, obviously that takes quite a lot of space, but I've seen, images and heard the stories of, underground farms in London. Maybe you can kind of give the audience a bit of a picture of where one may find an aeroponic farm such as your own.
Yeah, so it is quite what we find is the real determinants of where you're going to position your aeroponic farm is the supply chain. I speak of a warehouse, and that's arguably more true of the peri-urban spaces you referred to. I mean, some farms you may have seen in the news, farms operating in tunnels in London, and that's one extreme. But there's also, I mean, a warehouse and a barn are actually fairly similar. There's a lot of spare barn space in more rural areas. So actually the positioning of that indoor space isn't that crucial. I mean, the infrastructure isn't that crucial. What we really look for is for clients who have established supply chains, because they, or at least are prepared to put in the work to set up a supply chain, because that's actually the more crucial determinant of commercial success than the actual location, we would argue. So there's different models about how you set up that supply chain, but that's what we really look for. Yeah.
And I think a question that would be on the tip of most people's tongue is, different. Like Isle of Wight, where we're based, is one of Europe's biggest exporters of tomatoes, and the tomatoes taste great. How does aeroponically grown food taste?
It tastes fantastic. It really does. So, I mean, so much of this is driven by freshness. The difference between your freshly grown leafy greens, your freshly grown tomatoes and strawberries, and the stuff you get that has been shipped around the world for a week to 2 weeks is actually, it's quite remarkable. So it's really the depth of flavor. So you maybe when with the supermarket or food, you get you get that single defining flavor, but everything else is quite tasteless. With this fresher food, you really get that depth of flavor.
And how do you ensure that the nutrients then, I can imagine soil, you've got all the different components, why you grow, tomatoes in Isle of Wight, and you grow strawberries in Wexford in Ireland, and so on. I mean, how do you get those nutrients into the fruit and vegetable without the soil?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So obviously in soil, the plant forages. It actually looks for patches of high levels of nutrients. So that's really a self-regulating system. What most people don't know is that the majority of our soils in the present day are actually broadly depleted of micronutrients, because the majority of fertilizers only replace the nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium that plants need to grow quickly. So actually what you're eating already is actually quite nutrient depleted. What we would do in an aeroponic system is we introduce liquid nutrients, which is standard within the majority of the greenhouse industry, which has a diversity of those key NPK nutrients and micronutrients. And we look to maintain a stable pH and a stable level of nutrients in that solution. And what we also say, how much of that nutrient is entering the aerosol phase. So by turning it into a mist, obviously you disperse those nutrients. And we very much look to precisely dose the amount of nutrients those plants need. So they're always in a nutrient abundant environment. And then we always quality control. We always conduct a lot of quality control. So we do a lot of pass on that. Much see ourselves as a technology provider to this industry. We're looking to help growers grow more rather than grow ourselves. Yeah.
So I mean, we were talking about growing food a lot in the last few minutes, and as an entrepreneur, obviously you want to grow your business. I mean, what are, I guess it would be two questions, and we've got about 3 minutes to cover it. Is what have been the challenges to scale, and what is your vision for LettUs Grow for 2025?
Well, I'm quite lucky that growing food and growing a business are actually kind of synonymous for me, so I get to eat quite well during the whole thing. So packed lunches ain't a challenge. I guess challenges. Let's start with that. So the main challenge we've found is almost one of ambition. So like I said, I've described the hardware product that we sell, but the nature of establishing a vertical farm is that it's actually quite a significant design challenge. You have to really take into account the operation of that farm as much as you do the actual products that go within it. The first generation of vertical farms that were installed in the late noughties or 2011 region had reasonable products but were poorly designed in general. And a lot of them actually failed as an operating business because of it, because you've made that capital expenditure at that point and you're kind of locked in. So basically we've designed that, we have that hardware product. We also have a fully functional software control system for a farm that we're continually developing alongside our farming partners. So there's that design and deployment, there's that software, that hardware, and kind of also the biological knowledge side of things. So the challenge for us is really managing not just one rocket ship, it's like managing four and trying to get them all going in the same direction. So because we recognize that you need to understand the system, and really what you are installing is a component of a system as much as a product into a warehouse. So there's that intellectual challenge and that challenge of pace. And I think that ties into one of the other challenges. So we're fortunate in that we have raised seed investment and some grant funding as well. So we are funded in that, to conduct that mission. But if we're in competition internationally with companies from America, companies from the Far East, and the American funding landscape is much more generous, which can be seen in two ways really. But than the UK scene. So we operate, I'd say, in a much more cost-effective manner than our American competitors. But I would also say that obviously we can't just throw money at problems. We are developing, hopefully with intelligence, but we have a fundamental speed limit. So essentially, we're trying to do all this as fast as we can, sensibly as we can, because obviously doing it stupidly actually takes more time. And that's been the challenge, trying to make sure that we make the right decisions at each kind of decision point, so we can at least keep pace, if not out accelerate some of the American competitors, I'd say.
So if you want to, we're running up against the clock here, and if you had to leave with if you want to leave an impression, a vision for LettUs Grow for the next several years, what do you want people to leave this session thinking, and what should they be looking out for?
You broke up slightly when you asked that question.
I was just saying, if you want to leave our viewers with kind of one thing about LettUs Grow that hold strong, what would you like that to be? That's kind of forward looking. What should they be thinking LettUs Grow is going to look like and achieve? Yeah,
of course. So I think I'd certainly want to touch on the circularity of vertical farming and how it can be integrated with some of these more analogous systems. So, for example, you mentioned aquaponics earlier. That's basically a vertical farm hooked up to an onshore aquaculture. And we've also investigated other collaborations with things like anaerobic digesters and algal bioreactors with regards to wastewater treatment that flows out of our farm, and actually organic neutralizer to flow into our farm. The message I'd really want to send is one of, I guess, inspiration and kind of the sense of scale that can be delivered by this industry. So the way I see the food industry, the food industry developing, is really that resilience and consistency are going to be one of the main are going to become some of the most valuable commodities in agriculture moving forward. We speak of something about having about 60 harvests left on a lot of our topsoil. We're going into a period of history of almost unprecedented volatility. What these farms, these large aeroponic vertical farms or large aeroponic greenhouse farms can offer is consistency of supply, and consistency of supply with far lower water and resource usage. And what really excites me about that is that actually we can start to deploy farms in areas of the world outside of your Western developed nations, in places where actually the access to consistent food could actually have a significant impact on health, but also on stability and on there's a lot of focus on energy intensity, and I'm very positive about the curve I'm seeing with regards to increased energy efficiency within these farms. But I would encourage people to look past that. I think the resource, water efficiency, and access to resilient supply positions this industry as one of the main, I guess, bulwarks against some of this instability. And I think as that gets priced into the market, this farming will become incredibly cost effective. So it sounds like aeroponics has a lot to offer, and that LettUs Grow is in a good place to help make that possible. I think, as you said, the access to food and resiliency is a really interesting topic, and obviously many additional system level benefits. So I would be happy to chat away with you for another while, but we've got to let our other startups get a voice today at our Disruptive Innovation Festival Startup Day. I'm sure they can find out more about LettUs Grow on your website, and I'm sure you'd be more than happy to chat with people. I'd also like to thank the live audience who joined this conversation. Please share with us your thoughts and questions that you have. And if you like LettUs Grow, if you did like LettUs Grow, make sure to let us know on ThinkDiff session page or by using the hashtag ThinkDiff on Twitter. And in a brief moment, we will hear from the next startup joining us here at Startup Day at the DIF. So stay tuned. So thanks again, Jack, and all the best with LettUs Grow. Cheers.